Commander, welcome to the Biohacking Secrets Show.
Thanks so much for having me, man. I'm shamelessly waving my book at you as you're saying hello. I apologize for that.
Well, I'm excited to talk about
There's
it.
the book, man.
We respect and appreciate the pride that you have in your creation. We're going to talk about that.
We'll get there.
A for enthusiasm.
That's
All right,
good.
beautiful, man. Well, you're now in the rare company of guests who have been invited back to the show, and it's in part because you're constantly evolving and doing a lot of great things for the world of mobility and helping people open up their bodies to get more out of their performance. But you weren't always in this camp. Maybe take us back to when you were a bodybuilding guy and where your life was at, and give us a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I was really obsessed with just packing on as much muscle as possible, in large part just to prove to people that I was good enough and strong enough and big enough and like all the enough things. And that translated into bulkier movement, kind of like digressing in sport. I was playing ice hockey at the time, and injuries, had chronic back pain, kind of suffered from, I don't know, I call it just like a sensation of like disconnect, and in large part now I'm looking back, I was like, well, I was kind of callousing myself up and thickening myself up. Like, how could anybody ever possibly get in the first place? And yeah, then ended up moving to Hawaii and started studying psychology, went to the U8 University, Hawaii out there, and went to massage school, and then ended up going to Rolfing school. And then it's been a journey of putting the parts back together, essentially.
Nice. And when people ask you, like, what is the Align method? What do you say?
Well, first of all, the Align method, in large part, the publishers demanded it was called method. I just wanted to call it Align. But I think that the methodology aspect of it is teaching people how they can start to integrate more effective movement into literally every aspect of their life. So right now, as we're doing this interview, for example, I'm taking one knee, so I'm kind of upright. I'm outside. You can see I have sun coming down on my back. I'm literally doing it on my cold plunge freezer. I have a sauna behind me, so I've kind of hacked, in quotations, my environment so that technically I'm at work right now, and I have all these health-inducing factors surrounding me. So that's not, I don't think I'm an oddity in that. I think that anybody can do that. It's just we don't get any education on it. And that's what the Align method represents.
Nice. I love it. Over there biohacking and not looking for shortcuts, not using all sorts of weird technology.
Yeah, biohack it's just like, is hiking up a hill a biohack, or is jumping in a cold river a biohack? Like, it's just words.
Right.
Like, you need to do the work. I don't think your biology, in my opinion, responds that well to anything that's like truly like a hack per se. I think in the end, it's like you do the work, your cells respond because they've known that for millions of years. And if not, I don't know. Carl Jung has a quote is saying something along the lines of the best way to improve yourself is through retrogression. And when we seek out something beyond that, technological advancements and such, it's usually more expensive and short-lived. But going backwards is more sustainable and cheaper. So I think sitting outside as I do this podcast interview, as I use technology to do it, to me, it's kind of like combining worlds.
Yeah, for sure. We're big advocates. Carrie and I start just about every day with workout, sun. We'll sometimes go to the beach and do some breath work or just meditate and kind of catch the sunrise and tune our circadian biology. And then do a few hard things like ice baths. And, we got a modified, breath work. We got a modified ice bath following some of the recommendations that you made.
Great.
So 16 cubic foot Home Depot freezers out on the porch. We can work out, sauna, jump in that thing. And we just found that both of us are more effective if we stack 3 to 5 hard decisions and activities that stress the body, but then trigger that adaptive response into the morning. I love that that's some of the things that you're teaching people how to do.
Yeah. All the most meaningful things are cheap to free. Most of the most invaluable tools for your health and well-being and cognitive function and success in the world and it's pretty much right in front of us. Like go out into your yard, create a meaningful relationship with your neighbor or with anybody. Text a friend and tell them how much you care about them. Like all those things that really, really provide value. Like we already have them. Most of those things don't really have a strong affiliate code, so if you do like steaming kale, like no one's going to sell you steamed kale in an Instagram ad. So we don't talk about that nearly as much as like all the other stuff.
What would you say is your optimal morning routine?
Optimal morning routine. I get sun immediately. So that's the first thing I do before anything is I typically go out and my shirt's off and, I'm wearing like some shorts or, whatever. And if I had the ability, I live on Ocean Park in Santa Monica. So I'm like literally like go out on like somewhat of a main-ish street. I would go out butt naked.
Dong out?
I would for sure go dong out. I think that's the answer. And there's all sorts of interesting research that shows that you guys already are well familiar with of sun on the testicles, boosting testosterone, and I mean that's the most important thing for me is kind of setting that circadian rhythm, you could say. Intentionally exposing my eyes to the sun, not necessarily in like a weird sun gazy way, although I'm pretty much sun gazing. I just don't, that term I think is kind of like, I think most people kind of steer away from that. You say that, you're like, okay, official tinfoil hat guy. Mm-hmm. But I look at the freaking sun, when it's coming up over the horizon, I feel like it's like literally bathing my eyes and sterilizing blood. And, the sun's passing through the suprachiasmatic nucleus and activating dopamine, blah, blah, blah. Like it's doing good stuff, man. Like, that's to me feels the first thing before putting food into my body. I put sun into my body. And then from there, I just drink some water. I'll make some tea or coffee. I'll throw some like butter in it. And I'll throw music on or listen. This morning I listened to Terrence McKenna because he's just insane and amazing.
What?
And
you listen to a book or a lecture?
I discovered this podcast. What is it called? It's called The Psychedelic Salon. And I don't think it's overly popular, but they have like 600 odd episodes. And I just listened to a thing with Timothy Leary where he was doing an interview while he was in prison, and another one with Terrence McKenna. And I'll listen to stuff on YouTube, and it's nice to be able to pop it into my cell phone, because people listening to this already realize. So I'll either go like some type of like philosophical something or another, or just music. And sometimes I'll like intentionally do a little wiggle, like dance, like Weird Al. It's strange.
Yeah, that's great. We had some ecstatic dance.
Yeah, we're not laughing at you. We're laughing at you.
You're good. Yeah, we're in the same team.
You should have saw our weekend.
we've been sun looking for years. Even a lot of mornings I'm in a headstand position looking 10 to 20.
I like that you said possession. That's probably more accurate.
Yeah, I'm Freudian slips over here.
Yeah.
If I start going off and speaking tongues in this episode, you'll know why.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of mornings starting with looking toward the sun. And we've had clients that have improved their prescription lens prescriptions by like 2 and 3 different scripts just by getting up in the morning, looking toward the sun, nothing dangerous, paying attention to their body and that feedback. So like, yeah, we're right there with you. We did ecstatic dance.
The sun literally reshapes the structure of the eye. A large part of myopia, which is becoming just ubiquitous, it's like, of course you can't see in the distance, is in large part perhaps because of all the chronic staring into cell phones and books and walls right in front of us. And yeah, exactly, being bombarded by like junk light, blue light, and especially at the wrong times of the day. But then also a lack of getting that natural full spectrum light and actually going outside, like having the real thing, and so again, commonly the typical prescription for that or remedy would be seeking out some eye supplement, or staying inside your cave and eating more carrots or some kind of carotene supplement. Like meanwhile, like the answer is outside of your door.
Yeah.
Yeah, get out and get back like a wild animal.
Yeah.
Did a lot of this start out of necessity for your own physiology and seeing that the things that you were doing in bodybuilding and just focusing on mass weren't delivering the results that you were looking for, or not resulting in you feeling the way that you wanted to feel? Like, yeah. How did it go from this to a movement that's that's helping people all over the world?
I think probably pain would be the predominant thing, and so I had a bunch of shoulder dislocations, and I had like an ankle dislocation, and, just chronic back pain and general sensations of, what I was describing before. And so that leads a person, me in this case, to seeking out professional help and just asking those questions about how do we, I used to really believe that the natural state of the human organism was like pain, and to not be in that, I was like, wait, if you discover somebody's like a unicorn, they're like, well, you don't have any pain in your body? Like, that's not, they're like, yeah, no, I feel good. Feel really good. I'm like, oh, like you must be lying or delusional because I'm dying over here.
Yeah.
So I think that essentially it was like most people, pain caused different questions to be asked, because there's only so long that you can ram your head against the wall. It's like the Einstein quote about, the same, whatever he said, the same thought going into an issue isn't going to be able to change the problem. I've just destroyed that, but it's something along those lines. So you got to change your thought patterning to solve the problem. What did he say? You guys know what he said. What did he say? How's he say it?
Solve a problem with the same line of thinking that created it in the first place, and then there's like the definition of insanity.
There's all doing the same thing.
I'm butchering them too. We're just
expecting different.
Butcher quotes
turning it into great right now.
Damn you!
That's not what I said.
German too, I guess.
Oh, beautiful. So what did you start doing different? When did you start experiencing breakthroughs? And, what were the changes that were occurring in your mindset? You've done a lot of work on yourself too. Yeah. What were the changes to your exercise and training, your nutrition? What helped you start getting out of pain for the people that may still be in it?
I think in large part, I'm still in the process of all this stuff. You guys probably are as well. And I think a big thing for me has just been feeling like safe in the world and feeling worthy of love. And, walking into a room and feeling like you're connected and, there's nothing to be ashamed of, or there's no reason to kind of like hold your head down or kind of try to hide. That has a huge impact on your nervous system. If you're chronically held in contraction, or say like having a scoliosis in your spine, that's more consistent with adolescent girls will more consistently have scoliosis. So their spines will start to kind of wrinkle into this position, which I'm not saying this is a fact, because I don't, it's tough to pinpoint exactly why that happens, but it would be an interesting conversation to suggest that perhaps that could be some form of structural hiding. I don't really want to be seen right now. I have, my chest is changing, there's blood coming out of me, and guys are looking at me and this weird, like I'm like some kind of like prey creature. Like I could see that there being lots of reason in that point in the culture that we live in to, feel more comfortable hiding. Since it wouldn't be really appropriate to like go to school with a box over your body, your structure will start to change shape, and just to give you the internal sensation that people can't see you. And so coming out of that and feeling more proud to be in your body, not having any shame of having an anus or having a cock or having a vagina or, anything about your childhood, or just like, I'm here, man, whatever happens, like I'm just a part of the algorithm. There's nothing for me to contract and hide from in myself. And so I think that that's a real meta out there description of how I started doing push-ups differently, but I think that's been a part of it.
Yeah, these examples show up everywhere. I remember noticing, I went to Italy in 2003, and I was in awe of how much physical contact the people had with one another. And it made me keenly aware that that was something I was not comfortable with. And then I started looking at, they would, if you cheers and you don't make eye contact, it's 7 years bad sex.
Yeah, exactly.
Which also made me keenly aware that I was terrible at eye contact. Like all this stuff came to the forefront by seeing people that were good at those things. And these are variations of shying away. And it's an underlying psychology that's very disempowering.
And
we're
you see
afraid
that,
to engage.
I think the guy's name is James Prescott, and he studied various different cultures around the world that the amount of touch that they had from their mothers, or like the tribe in general, as they were growing up, as their kids and infants. And he found a consistent 1-to-1 correlation of the amount of war that the tribes would go through compared to the amount of physical touch. So when they were in more compassionate, touching, caring upbringings as kids, they don't grow up to be assholes. And there's another, the Romanian orphanages is a really popular example that I have in the book as well, in the chapter all about touch. During that time frame, there was an excess of orphans and not enough caretakers. And so those kids in the orphanages, they literally wouldn't grow. They'd all have all these emotional disorders, and like their bones, their connective tissue, it would stop. It would go into like this dormancy period because they were getting, this is again kind of hypothetical why it happens, but they were getting the signal that it's not safe to grow. So we should slow down the metabolism, go into this like metabolic winter. Because we should wait until, essentially like fasting from life, until we have the touch from our mother or a touch from our family to take care of us and grow us up. I think that's a consistent thing with adults. If you feel touched and you feel loved and you feel supported, like adults are just, they're, what do they say? They're babies in adult costumes. We're dealing with all those same patterns that get ingrained since like pre-age 6 or whatever it is. And so we buy cars and we put jewelry on and perfume and get haircuts and put muscles on and have business cards. But underneath that is just, a childlike operating system, I think.
Yeah, there's a power that we step into as well. The more comfortable we become without all the guises, and when we're comfortable in our own body, and having a conversation face-to-face, heart-to-heart with somebody, it shows that work has been done to strip away the things that are often distractions.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of that, are you looking into the camera eyeball? Because I actually had like a heart-to-heart moment with you as you were saying that.
Oh, I felt it. I was
I'm serious.
I almost said, I was like, I'm going to show Aaron Alexander that you can have heart-to-heart conversations over the internet. Because I know you're big on in-person. Every time we talk, when you can be in California,
I do all in person.
But we will be on. That's funny. But yeah, I noticed that, and I was thinking the same thing.
I felt it too. It was just awkward for me to not be a part of it, but to witness it firsthand.
Yeah, you kind of third wheeled on that heart to heart I just had with Anthony.
Back. Hey, Aaron, talk to us about your book. Let's get into it.
Sure.
What's the breakdown? Who's it for? Give us some of the dirty deeds.
Mm-hmm. So I think because the little that I know about business related things, I kind of have the idea that it needs to be like niched down and have a specific avatar. And it's like 35-year-old Selma in Connecticut that's working on her computer and hunched forward and staring at her cell phone all the time. And, she wants to feel more joy in her body, and she wants to, feel like life is more like a dance and go through the day and just see endless opportunities of wellness, as opposed to just being like martyring myself for work and then going to a Pilates studio and sweating for 45 minutes. That's my avatar. But
Selma, if you're out there.
Selma, the publishers and most everybody that's read the book has been like, no, dude, this book is literally for everybody. And I'm like, I don't know if that's like allowed.
For everybody, it's for nobody. That's what
no, exactly. And I'm like, shit. Okay, so either Selma or everybody, I guess, would be my response. But it's pushing against the common model of fitness being something that you do, and instead something that you are 100% of the time. So the position that you choose to sleep in, the amount that you walk or don't walk, the way in which you walk, the amount of sun exposure, the sounds in your environment, the way that you use your eyes, the mechanics of how you pick something up off of the ground, the mechanics of your breathing, all of that, body language, what is the meaning of that? That's essentially what the book tackles, is looking at all those kind of abstract aspects of fitness that aren't so easily contained inside of like a CrossFit box. But most of the CrossFit box that I go into are pretty darn progressive, actually, and they're talking about all the same stuff.
Yeah, they've started doing a lot of trigger point work and myofascial release and some of the things that are in your world. So Selma comes to you with some pain. She's working a job that she has to. She's got maybe 1 to 2 hours per day max to work on herself. Where do you start people out? What are some overview components of the method? Where do you feel like where's the starting line for humanity right now with all the tech in our life?
Yeah, super simple. I break it down to 5 movement principles. What is this? I was sitting here. 5 movement principles for a stronger body, sharper mind, and stress-proof life. Subtitles or subtitles, whatever. But that's essential. It's essential. Yeah, it's essential. We're going through the contents of the book. I stand by. You know, with the cover and everything. I actually think the cover is actually great. It's like a picture out in the.
I thought it was a good cover too. Honestly, I was.
No, I like it. But so with Selma, I would just first break down, are you doing the 5 daily movement principles? And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, well, let's start. One thing, Selma, have you been on the ground this week or today? If you haven't been, you need to. like it's like, that's like challenging language to hear, like you need to, but like I think you need to. As a human organism, that's what you've come from since the beginning of ever. And that cross crawl pattern and being able to roll and cross your legs, and maybe if you're a Native American, you're like weaving something while you're sitting on your butt and you got the thread in your toes. Like that's been a part of our biology since ever. And now recently, Western culture that has a higher incidence of osteoarthritis of the hip, of the knee, hip replacements, that's like a chair thing. That's a chair sitting thing. That's not a Native American, tribal, Amazonian, African, like that's not a thing. Fall risk for elderly, if you give a shit about yourself or your parents or your grandparents, get them on the ground, because while you have the capacity to be on the ground, you're shoring up that relationship so you don't lose it. If that chasm between hip hinging at 90 degrees, or probably not even really a hip hinge, but just kind of like collapsing at 90 degrees with your hips and getting all the way down and all the way back up, every day that you go without a reasonable amount of that chasm gets larger and larger and larger until you can't jump it anymore. And now you have a fall risk and you have to walk around with a red button, and so that to me is absolutely insane that's not a more common conversation. And so that's one of the chapters, is one of the principles. And then there's other principles I think everybody should be doing as well.
Well, walk us through. That's the first principle. What's the next
so
one?
like sitting more. Are we talking about sitting more on the ground? Like
anything.
I see you talk about sitting culture and things like that, and creating a workstation where you're like you cross-legged down.
Yeah. It could be anything. I just want people to get down on the ground, and then ideally from there we can have a mechanical conversation, which we get into in the book, and figure out just like anything, just breathing isn't breathing. That's like, just because you did a thing doesn't mean you did it to its highest efficacy. Mm-hmm. And so with spending time on the ground, there's all sorts of mechanical principles that we can talk about. But yeah, any position, because by you making that journey, the primordial journey of moving all the way up to all the way down on the ground and then back up, you're taking your joints for the most part through a pretty darn full range of motion. You're circulating fluids, you're moving lymph back through the bloodstream to get recirculated. You're doing all the things. So that would be the thing, is pretty much any position first, and then from there, let's talk about specifics.
And you're talking about, as long as they're going from standing to down on the ground and then coming back up, even if it's not pretty, like my dad has neurodegenerative disease, Parkinson's. Him getting down on the ground and back up, it's not anything that's going to make an Instagram highlight reel. Yeah. But you're saying there's benefit just in going through those motions. Bending down.
I mean, think about a baby. So when a baby, like a lot of adults need to be reprogrammed, much like a child. So if you can get out of the way of yourself enough to actually feel, what is it like? We're smart organisms. So you can feel physics, how do I move myself through gravity most effectively? So I think that naturally, if you do get out of the way of yourself enough, which will probably be hard depending on how much patterning you have, which is a lot at this point, myself included, your body will naturally figure out, what's the most effective way to get up and down from this. But I think as well, it's really smart to have a coach and break down some specific principles to kind of jump you forward, because most of us do have so much imbalance patterning between that. And that's what the book breaks down. It's like, okay, here's the actual principles to really follow through that. But if you don't have the book and you're out in the middle of Siberia somewhere or something like that, you probably already are on the ground, actually. But I would recommend for that person still just spend more time down there. So that could be like checking your text messages. That could be eat breakfast down on the ground, ideally outside. That could be checking your emails. I wrote almost all of the book on the ground. I think 99% of the book I wrote, from either lying on like a biomat, lying outside, or I was up on my roof a lot too, so I could get sun.
Nice.
Yeah.
And does it matter if it's the grass or pavement or?
Grass is better. Yeah, the more exposure you can get to all the probiotic stuff and the whole like Shinrin Yoku phytoncides and boosting the immune system, like nature bathing.
What are those? What did you just mention there?
He's speaking
fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of tugs, just Shinrin Yoku is an unnecessary word. In Japanese, it means nature bathing, and essentially they studied the science of the beautiful, magical symphony of chemistry that happens when you just go walk through the woods. And so the closer you can put yourself out in that environment, the more healthy it's going to be. You don't need to coop yourself. Like just doing that, you probably work on a laptop. You probably a large part of your work is on your phone. So you can move yourself outside. If you can do that, put the computer in the shade, what have you. Ideally get some grass or something like that. Be barefoot, put yourself near trees. That's helpful with, I don't know what the term is, alleviating some of the EMF, being near trees. I talked to people that know more about this than I do, and they said, get near trees. I'm like, okay, cool. I trust you. Mm-hmm. There's all these ways to stack healthy variables. Ground is one of the variables. Outside is another one of the variables. Put yourself near health-inducing sounds, so soothing sounds. Get yourself a water burbler or build a pond in your yard. Get a bird feeder so you have birds coming into your yard. All of those things affect your autonomic nervous system, indicating that, okay, I'm safe in the world. If you put yourself near sirens and all that stuff, for the most part, that kind of rattles your nervous system up. Compound that with staring into a screen all day long, because your visual system is connected to your autonomic system. So if I'm staring into a screen, I'm isolating that like myopic focused vision. A guy called Andrew Huberman, who actually reviewed my sight chapter in the book.
Andrew.
Yep.
We on the podcast too.
We created a Biohacking the Brain course together. He came.
Beautiful. He's amazing, man.
He's awesome.
I'm a really big fan of him.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you meet people that are like, they're like a dude first or a chick first. They're like a human first. And then, oh, by the way, I do this. I'm like this amazing professor.
He's like a boxing neuroscientist.
Yeah, exactly. Like, by the way, I'm kind of a superhero. Yeah. But we can like bro out and like, we can have a beer. Like it's totally fine. We can just.
He's great.
So anyway, so that's something as well. Another compound. I'm kind of rambling on, so I'll stop very soon. But that's
great.
Another variable.
Like keep them coming.
That's another variable that you can stack into this healthy variable sandwich that we're creating now. Is activate, exercise your panoramic vision. Mm-hmm. If you're a really stressed out person, like think about listening right now. You might hopefully maybe taking a walk or maybe you're in the car or something. Instead of looking at the car right in front of you, or even worse, staring at the phone right in front of you, look out and take kind of the panorama of the highway as a whole and look out. And, hopefully you're walking, it'd probably be safer. But look up into the trees and look up into the clouds and, allow your vision almost to like blur a little bit and calm down. And literally that's tied into your nervous system. Says, okay, we're chilling out here. I don't need to hunt. I'm not stringing my bow back and about to kill an animal. I don't need to focus in like that. Right now it's time to chill and rest and digest and repair. Your nervous system's it's operating on an operating system that's millions of years old. The fact that we have all this technology laced up to our faces, it's like, we're still dinosaurs.
Yeah, for sure. Every twice a month, I go see Dr. Aaron Applebaum in Boca, and he does a bunch of body work that's way deeper than I could go on my own. And we were having this same conversation yesterday. He's become a bit of a mentor. He's in his 60s, but he does Tai Chi and a lot of different martial arts. And he's incredibly wise. He's got the pattern recognition from working with like thousands upon thousands of people. And he was talking to me and he was like, what you need to be very conscientious of is just what you were describing. He's like, you spend a lot of time, very intense, very focused, but the signal that you are sending to your nervous system is one of fight or flight.
Yep.
You know, sympathetic dominance. He's like, and we need to go into like not just predator vision, but also like prey, taking it all in, getting that panorama like you described. And during that, even using like a self-soothing breath, gentle nasal cyclical breathing that like feels good and builds that coherence between head and heart. And it was very obvious that he was correct. And like, even just in the past day, I've been working on more of those things and just weaving them in, like even as we're conversating, keeping yourself good.
And I think there's also value in, sinking your teeth into some bloody meat and fucking fighting somebody and wrestling and hip throwing somebody over and whoop-ah, and whoa, like throw a tomahawk.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, ton of value in that.
I saw Kerry getting excited.
Hey, you're speaking my language.
You're getting fired up over here.
Good. Well, Aaron, technology. What have you found some of the most effective strategies to coexist with our devices? Because I know last time we did a session with you when I was in California, you were correcting everyone's posture with the devices. I know you have some simple biohacks, quote unquote, to share with the listeners regarding how we can coexist with our devices.
Well, one that's really apparent that you guys have probably talked about a lot is just like flexing the heck out of your airplane mode on any of your devices. If you don't need to be radiating information down to your testicles or ovaries or what have you, it seems wise to not do that. Yeah. And so, I mean,
for sure. Especially with the 5G networks that are being all over the place without our control, at least you have control over that airplane mode button.
Yeah. So I think that's a big thing that I will do without fail is I download stuff. I'm a downloader. And when I download, I put the phone down. I keep it out of my pocket, and I come back once it's ready and it's all juiced up with all the radiation. I put it on airplane mode and I throw it back into my pocket and I go out for a walk. Another thing is, as you are staring into your phone, there's an interesting photographer. I talk about him way too much and not know his name, but he created he photoshopped the phone out of just like a bunch of different. It's so cool.
It went viral too. That was good.
Yeah, exactly. It's very cool. Yeah,
people highly recommend laying like back to back, and there's just an empty void.
You may have actually showed me one of those.
Yeah, it's really It's a. I think as far as images that I've seen, like of our time, I think it's actually one of the more valuable images that I've seen. As far as like the meaning behind it, because depression is the number one leading cause of disability worldwide. Is that a nutritional thing? Is that a lack of outdoor time thing? Is that a relationship thing? Is that a radiation thing? Or is it a mechanical thing?
Yeah,
it's all of it. But the conversation that I see a massive deficit in is the mechanical conversation, which is, again, essentially what the Align Method book represents. Is like I'm filling in. My intention is to fill in that space and say, here's the whole mechanical guide on all of this stuff. And when you look at people in that position, they're like, oh, they're hunched over and they look kind of mopey. And so what I would recommend with that is another one of the chapters in the book is getting into the value of hinging at your hips. So when you are looking at the phone, keep your spine nice and long and neutral, keep your neck upright, and, maybe just kind of like put yourself into a little position so you kind of hinge forward into the phone. It's going to look kind of weird. Some people can do it to like bring the phone up in front of your face like that. Most people aren't going to do that. It's like a little strange. But what you can do is just kind of teeter yourself forward, keep yourself long, keep that neck upright so you're not exacerbating that forward head posture. And do that as you're working on your phone, or put your phone on a desk or something like, some kind of surface, and hinge your hips over. So now you're stretching out your posterior chain, you're getting long and stacked through your spine. And then another thing, this is probably, again, more details than is necessary, use your opposite hand, your less dominant hand, and try to be flowy with that in life in general, because that's been shown to help with creative thought. So if you can be more fluid with the mechanics of your movement, you will typically that'll translate to be more fluid with the mechanics of your thought. So you can see when someone moves really clunky, you pretty much have a sense of what their personality is going to be like. Mm-hmm. It's very rare for someone to kind of clunk over and knock the glass over and look like a robot and come and be like, well, hello, I'm like, Rico Swat. Like it doesn't happen that way. A smooth mover will be a smooth talker, will be a smooth thinker, because it's all the same thing. So you can start to tap into your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions, and cognitive function through tapping into your movement function.
Yeah, I read a quote from a Buddhist monk, and he talked about kissing the earth with your feet. Imagine you're moving through the world as if you're kissing the earth with your feet. And I was like, I leave footprints everywhere I go. I'm like a bull in a china shop. I got some work to do.
Yeah. Footprints and sweat drops.
Yeah, it's just a trail. It's not hard to track me down. Just follow the water.
That's the value. That's the value. I just recently got a compound bow, and we're going out to.
We just went. Too. Yeah, we went last.
No way! Cool, man. Yeah, so I have a hunt, my first one ever in my life, in coming up in like 2.5 weeks in Maui, which is my old home, which is very exciting.
You going after the pigs?
I'll probably just do deer, but I might do boar as well.
Okay.
We'll see. But the interesting thing with hunting that I think is so valuable, and it could be hunting, it could be gathering too. The only thing is with gathering is the plants typically don't run away. So there's not as much of a hunt. Well, there's not as much of a need for you to be like one with nature. If you're not with hunting, your only choice is to become one with nature, or nature will recognize you and piece the freak out. So it's an interesting, how our environment forms us. So being out in the woods with the intention of bringing an animal back to hopefully feed your family. That there's a guy called Marshall McLuhan that wrote a book called The Medium is the Massage. His original meaning was The Medium is the Message, and he did change the book name to Medium is Massage. I think there's some interesting thing with like the editor. I think they thought it said massage, and then they're like, oh, we like it, we'll keep it. Anyways, a separate thing. But what the meaning of the medium is the message is that it's not what you're reading on your phone. It's not what you're listening to on the podcast. It's not what you're reading in your book. The bigger effect is actually the medium of how you're capturing this information, and how the mediums are actually forming you at a deeper level. And so we're wrapped up in the minutia of the details, but in large part what's really forming us is this structure, the society structure that we're in. If you put yourself into a hunting structure, you're out in the woods, all of a sudden that medium forms you into a more sensitive, conscientious, essentially like tantric individual. You have to tap into all of your senses. If there's a breeze, you have to tap into that. If there's a smell, you have to tap into that. You have to affect your smell so you don't scare animals away. And you have to be aware of, okay, the breeze is coming through. It's pushing my smell that direction. We don't have that as you're walking down the street with like a coffee in one hand, your cell phone in the other hand, and wearing a pair of high heels. Like, we don't have that. And when you do have that attention, I think it's very challenging to be anxious, depressed, or any of those bummer feelings while you're completely present to what the heck's going on in the world. Mm-hmm. The more that you tap away, you pull yourself out from what's happening, your senses, the easier it is to get trapped in your mind. I'm getting all like Ram Dass. I'm listening to too much philosophy shit. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I'm so the newer or newest Ram Dass album is incredible. And I was actually thinking of both that and a book by Jerry and Esther Hicks. It's one, they do kind of like a Law of Attraction series, but I'll listen to the Ram Dass album on repeat, or some of these books from Jerry and Esther Hicks, like Money and the Law of Attraction, or any of their different niches, because it feels like vibrational tuning. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big believer that we're a lot like tuning forks, and we can tune ourselves with what we read or what we listen to, or just by surrounding ourselves with life, nature, other people, and especially if those people vibrate on a similar wavelength, have similar values. It's something that we charge them up, they charge us up, and you can measure that the waves coming off of our heart and our brain, that frequency. I think Heart Math Institute
did this, I believe, where they literally will attune to each other in order to create rapport. So the way that we can connect is we have to see some piece of ourselves in another. And if we don't see that in another, it'll be pretty much a disconnect. And so I think naturally our biology, maybe because we all just are actually connected, probably, but nonetheless, at least from the sake of rapport building and tribal building, being able to be a cohesive unit, will literally become one. So you go to a rock concert or whatever, and everybody's holding their lighter up and swaying in unison. It's because it's one larger organism. That's probably the superpower of humanity, is that we have the capacity to transform ourselves from one isolated unit into 7 trillion if we start giving a shit about each other.
Yeah, that would be nice. Let's stop the text neck, y'all. And,
start some small pockets.
Care about
California, South Florida, Austin. Start growing from there. This is great. Where does body work, myofascial release, trigger point work fit into the Align method, if at all?
Yeah, it fits in a lot. So I break down, I think there's like 70 some different photos of different techniques, most using the Align band, which is a resistance band with a door anchor. So you can attach it to like a hotel room or your house or, anywhere, a car door, and use that to do various different techniques, which I break down in the book. So like pin and stretch technique or any form of myofascial release, contract, relax, AKA PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. It's just fun to say. There's no reason to say that at all. But you can kind of trick your nervous system in a way, or maybe gain a relationship would be a better way to say it, to gain trust that you're able to go into deeper ranges of motion than what your nervous system had typically believed or trusted. So I think that there is a valuable element in actually having the tools in your toolbox to go home or go out or go anywhere and be able to work on the mechanics of your ankle, your toe hinge, your knee, or your hip, or your spine, all of the parts. And so I think that there's lots of value in understanding the mechanics of that. And I think that, we don't need to be completely dependent on a physical therapist or a chiropractor or massage or rolfer or whatever. I think that you have all the tools that you need within you. And it's really helpful to go see somebody that's kind of like a master to kind of be able to jump you down the path. I think that was a nebulous response. I don't know, but the answer is yes. I think it's important.
Hey, I'm for it.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, very nice. We like that.
So you just finished writing this book. How did you utilize pieces from your method for writing breaks to keep yourself refreshed? To keep your body
all over. I literally did the whole book while following the method in quotations. So like I said, I did everything from various different positions on the ground. Sphinx pose was a big one that I used quite a bit. I put a pillow underneath my pelvis to support my low back, so I'm not in like excessive hyperlordosis. And then I press my elbows down into the ground and kind of get my head nice and long. Sometimes I collapse too. That's fine. Sometimes I lay on my right side and open up my whole like lateral line, open up through QL and the ribs and all that, intentionally following the breath into those areas. Sometimes I'd write standing. I'd throw the computer up on like the kitchen counter and just start like stretching my hamstrings and kind of twisting my hips out and doing some yoga stuff. I would set a Pomodoro timer, which I talk about that technique in the book. And, so I'd have intentional 25-minute intervals and then have like 5, I wouldn't always follow it exactly, but something along the lines of a 25-minute interval, bell goes off. Okay, cool. I get this 5-minute break. And then I'd go and I'd walk and that's been shown to help with creativity and memory consolidation. So just taking a break and kind of like pouring the cup out, I think is really important. Most of us, our educational model is we don't give a shit about what's in your cup. We're just going to keep on filling and say that we did. I think it's way more valuable to let kids dance and listen to music and, pick each other up and climb trees and lick turds, and all that stuff's a part of the adaptation process of being a human being.
Your kids, Aaron, your kids can lick the turds.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever
Start a special school for turd licking. There's a market for everything.
Yeah, but so that was, all of those things. I didn't look at turds during the writing of the book, but if I did, I'd probably have a healthier microbiome.
Your immune system would probably be through the roof.
You would for sure be
there was an interview with Israel Adesanya who just got not the welterweight belt, whatever, or maybe it was the welterweight belt, and he was talking about, he goes, I had malaria 9 times as a kid. He goes, my immune system it was like the greatest thing that
animals is helpful with allergies. It's a big deal. You want to expose yourself. The more that you, but you can't cheat the system. You can squish down. Maybe it's like a tube of toothpaste. You can squish the toothpaste.
Analogy. I really felt like
think on the analogy.
That analogy.
Yeah, thank you. That was easy for me to access. Yeah.
Yeah. Too easy. I don't know.
That was too easy. Right. But yeah, so I think that within that, it's the same thing. Like, you can protect yourself, in quotations, from the bugs and the bacteria now, but at some point you'll have to pay the price for that. So I'd rather have a cold today to avoid some type of like life-threatening illness when I'm 60.
Totally.
Sure.
And I'm sure you hit points where you didn't want to write, whether you call it writer's block or just resistance or whatever. What was the conversation that you had with yourself during those periods? And how did you handle that? Did you go with it and just not write and go do something else? Or was it, hey, I made a commitment that I needed to sit down and write this many words every morning? Like, talk us through how you were able to handle those moments.
Yeah. That's, I think I failed a lot. I think, but then failure, what does that mean? But I would, I think having the threat of judgment was a big thing for me, and just knowing that people like you guys, like, there's a good chance you guys will read the book, or at least parts of it, and you're smart mofos. Like, you know what you're doing. You've talked to all the smartest people. You're reading all the books. Like, you really know your shit. You're gonna have this book with Aaron Alexander's name on it, his face on the front. That makes me like crap my pants. And so I think that was the thing that was like a driving force in large part, was like, this is, your name's going to be stamped on this thing, man. Like, you need to give a shit now, or again, I'll squish the toothpaste someplace else. I had a good time now, but then eventually I have to pay for it. So in large part, that's not a most beautiful answer, but in large part, I think it was like fear-based. And then the other part.
It lives forever. There's no question. The book lives forever.
Yeah.
And then the other part, a lot of the chapters were freaking fascinating, man. So there's like the last part it's called Moving Your Senses. And so it gets into the way that sound affects your physiology, how you can leverage that as a tool for your fitness and health and well-being, and sight and touch, and get into like mindfulness and, body language, and how your movement affects your thoughts and feelings. And so it was a really cool experience to get to immerse myself in those topics, ask, all these questions, get all this research. I had a co-writer as well. His name's Phil White. He co-writes with like Kelly Starrett, and he's done stuff like
I've got a plug up here.
Yeah, exactly. So he's awesome. He was a invaluable asset, because we could team up and talk about chapters and get psyched, and he was like fully on my team for it. Like, it was our book. Like, we were doing this thing together. And so that was invaluable to have somebody that I could reach out and have like a partner. So I think that was kind of the combination thing. One, it was genuinely fun. The only parts that were less fun for me are writing about things that I already so well know, and I'm just like documenting it essentially, just so that we can like have it in there, because people need to know it. But the chapters that were challenging, those were the ones that were actually the most inspirational, and I could actually like, time would be lost because I was so intrigued by the way the sound of the chimes in the background or the freaking toaster oven or whatever affects my physiology. And oh God, I got to ask more questions and research and listen to podcasts and write notes down. And then, oh man, I'm going to write about this. So those parts were quite easy. But there was other parts that, like I said, I was just petrified of judgment.
But what about, I mean, I relate. We had this event coming up. I was staying up late, making sure as many things, like we worked our butts off because we wanted it to be dialed in. We didn't want to, we've had moments in past events where maybe it wasn't as dialed in, and like it doesn't feel good. It's especially if you're already by nature a little hard on yourself.
Yep. Yeah. Most of the things that you're hard on yourself about, for the most part, depending upon what your perception of that is, very few other people are going to notice. But I think there's exceptions to that as well. You could just be kind of a derelict, and a lot of people think, maybe I fall into this category sometimes, where they think they're like the bee's knees, but in reality, they're like, nope, it's not happening.
I heard a great quote from Tim Ferriss, and he's like, "You're not as good as they say you are, or as bad as they say you are."
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, the other thing that I found interesting was how much my thoughts could change. So the way that I knew that the book was like complete, whatever that means, eventually just forced to stop, is I would go back through. The publishers give me another opportunity to like make an edit. At this point, they're saying essentially like, you pretty much can't edit anything, Aaron. This is just making sure. And then I would just like take whole paragraphs out, like, no, like it needs to change. And when I was at that point, and I would make changes to things. At this point, it had been, polished and revised probably, I don't know, 15 to 20 times or something like that, like going through and having people read. And, it was like, okay, we're like pretty polished at this point. And I would make changes, and then I would come back and look at it like a week later and think that it was so much better before. And that's when I started to lose trust in myself, essentially. And I'm like, okay, cool, it's fine. Like we're good. I don't need to make any more changes.
Good and done is better than perfect and never finished, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, which part of the book are you most excited to share with the world? Like if someone goes to thealignbook.com, they pick it up, they grab a band so that they could do a lot of these exercises and start taking corrective action to improve their physiology. Which part of the book, if people only employed one, do you feel would have a profound impact, or are you most proud of?
Well, there's kind of different directions with that. The things I'm most proud of are the things that were kind of challenging to explore and like wrap my head around, and gather resources from different people's opinions and all that. So like the moving your senses section, I think is very cool. The posture and personality section, I think is very cool. But as far as like the greatest impact on a person, if I could only give one part to Selma, I'd give her the 5 principles part and just have her do those things. The other part I'm essentially now at this point literally describing the whole entire book, but I think all of it all has value. The other part that would secondarily be of help would be how to change your environment. So if you can go in and augment the shape of your house, the shape of your car, your office, the way that you travel, then the medium is the message. The medium will form you into a brighter, sharper, stronger, more flexible, more stress-proof organism. So instead of giving you one thing, I literally just described the whole entire book, and there we are.
Well, just 150, and
beautiful. Thealignbook.com. You guys can
I think it's the Align Method.
No, it's the Align book is where the pre-sale for the book is.
Oh, the pre-sale.
Cool. Grab your pre-sale copy of thealignbook.com. Aaron Alexander, what some rapid fire questions.
Oh boy.
What does your weekly training split look like right now? If you were to kind of break down movement and how you integrate it into your life. I've seen some amazing videos of you. I think it's at Gold's Gym, doing a lot of functional movements, handstand.
So I thankfully had the blessing of, I was picking up a person doing like some partner acrobatic stuff, and I tweaked my wrist like 5 months ago, and I've been nursing that for the last while. And so I haven't been able to do much of that type of things. It's been more of like a rehab. And I say blessing because it helped me to observe how dependent I was on, this is probably going too far, but I've kind of described it as almost like prostituting my body for attention. And, you know, and so instead of treating my body with respect and nurturing it and seeing it like a vessel of, you know, connection and love and support and, you know, helping humanity be a better world or whatever, I was like, look at me, look what I can do. And then when I lost the ability to do that, it was actually quite helpful to like evolve as a human being. So now most of what I've been doing is like surfing, archery. I got into running. I still do like a lot of acro yoga stuff.
You almost said that with a little discontent. Yeah. You're like, I got into running.
Well, because my buddy wants me to do an Ironman, and I'm kind of like, all right, I'll do it, just pretty much to like kind of have the experience of it. I did a podcast interview with a guy called Sanjay Rawal recently that did a documentary called 3100, Run and Become, this like big amazing race. He travels around the world, does cool stuff, and so I'm like, all right, I got to check out this running stuff.
Carrie's been talking about an Ironman over here.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's sign up for one.
Like it's a good bucket list thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's me. It's mostly my ego saying, yeah, okay, I'll do it. But I'm like, all right, sometimes the ego can get you.
Does that sound fun? It just sounds like a good story to tell.
Yeah, exactly. That's the main reason I'm doing it. Well, I haven't signed up for one yet, but nonetheless. So typically I'll do kind of like 2 a days in quotations. I'll do either like a yoga class in the morning or go to Gold's and swing kettlebells around and do random things like that. A lot of like farmer carries and just like old school farm stuff combined with like, you know, new age dance moves and yoga stretchy stuff. And then the evening it's a non-negotiable for the most part that I'll go to the beach. And there's like parallel bars and pull-up bars and swings and slack lines. And I live right down by Santa Monica, Muscle Beach. So I'll go down there, watch the sunset. And I consider exposure to the sun, being outside, being grounded, being cold, being hot, being uncomfortable in various different social situations. I consider all that to be fitness. And so I try to incorporate that into the whole day. So making it so more like the whole day is this opportunity for fitness and well-being, as opposed to it being like, what are my splits? I don't really have a split. You know, it's kind of just like, what can I do right now to make things better?
For sure.
Nice. What did you eat yesterday?
Shit. I had coffee in the morning.
Good for you.
I had coffee in the morning with some butter stuff, and had cup of green tea, like a big old pot of green tea. I did an interview thing in my sauna with this gut biome expert guy. So we talked about things of that nature and drinking tea. Dinner, I went to Erewhon, had a big old fat salad with all sorts of random veggies and hard-boiled eggs and just like everything I could find from there. And lunch, I think I had bacon and eggs in the morning. I felt kind of sleepy after that, actually. Typically, bacon and eggs makes me feel pretty good, but after that, I was like, that's too much. So that was it. I essentially had like 2 meals, lots of tea in between.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you say to Selma or anyone listening right now who's enjoyed this conversation and they're on the fence about picking up the Align book?
The Align method. It's kind of confusing that it's the Align book is the URL, I'm realizing. But nonetheless, if they're on the fence about grabbing the Align method, that's interesting. Why would they? I guess I'd want to understand why they're on the fence. I think it would be likely. The publisher said something that was interesting that I didn't see in the book that I found to be pretty cool. Was they said it's about bringing more joy into your movement, joy into your body. And so I would say if you are tired of just kind of, you know, the splits and the front load in your fitness and the thing kind of like martyring yourself for the sake of like having abs, and you want to incorporate more joy into your physical experience, the Align method would be a great starting point.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, for most of my life, I mentally checked out during workouts, the opposite of being present and conscious and connected with my body, because I just wanted to get through the discomfort. And then you start realizing that's not the answer. And the answer is being more conscious and more aware. And in doing that, you start to find joy in the practice and recognize the additional joy that it brings to the rest of your day.
Yep.
So if that's something that, your listeners want, that our listeners want, go to thealignbook.com, pick up the Align Method, available now on pre-order. Grab yourself a band too. I'm going to jump off and grab a band after we finish and integrate some of these things into my training and movement practices.
Dope, man. I appreciate you guys. I really greatly value what you guys do in the world. I appreciate you opening up space for me to talk about all this stuff here. It's awesome.
Likewise, man. Appreciate the work you're doing.
You got to come visit sometime.
Yeah,
I'm coming out.
Come catch a business mastery or date with destiny or something like that here. And
our event.
Or our event. Yeah, our event's pretty awesome too. We have about 50 people on it. It's the best event they've ever been to. Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, guys. See you, brother.